Hiya. So this is going to be a new series where we look into some tunes in detail and we see what they can teach us about the relationship between melody and harmony and how we can use those ideas to solo with and all of that good stuff. So the tune we're going to do today is Green Dolphin Street, which is obviously a very common jazz standard, often played at gigs and jams. The key we're going to do it is an E flat, which I think is a standard professional key. Some people play it in C. Some people get very snotty about that, but I don't really care. But E flat seems to be the sort of more kind of, in the same way that you tend to play Autumn Leaves and B flat stroke G minor, you know, E flat seems to be the standard key for Green Dolphin Street. This tune was written in 1947, I think, as part of a soundtrack film score for a movie called On Green Dolphin Street, and became a jazz standard. Some versions to point up: the Nancy Wilson, George Shearing version is a very nice vocal standard version, and then there's a version, obviously a very famous version by Miles Davis in 1958 with an amazing turn from Bill Evans on piano, and then Bill Evans records it again with his trio a year after. So there's the three versions you might want to look at, but it's been recorded by so many jazz musicians it's hard to choose one over the other, to be honest. Although that Miles Davis version is probably the classic recording. Okay, so I'm going to step through each section of the tune. We're going to start with the A section, talk about that. Now the iconic sort of Green Dolphin Street chord progression is this thing here. So that's all happening over an E flat pedal. And the way I think of it is you've got this E flat major triad, which slides up a minor third and comes down a semitone each time, right? Now if we put that into first inversion and put the bass note underneath it, the E flat, you get this. It's a good fingering exercise in itself. So that is E flat major triad, straight chord. And then we go to E flat minor seventh, S slash E flat, E major slash E flat, and then E flat, right? Has to be an E flat major seventh, by the way, that chord, and that has to be an F7, right? So those chords are, you know, all related by that chromatic motion. The first chord, well, if we listen to the melody, and the melody for this bit is fairly straightforward, it just expresses the chords. But the very first part of the tune goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, like that. So that is just an E flat major seventh arpeggio. I'm sure Jordan would look at that as a tetrad, a G minor arpeggio with a flat 6 tension note. But we can just think of that as E flat major seventh for now, unless you're familiar with that language. Seventh, the next chord, E flat minor seventh, and then it's F7 with that top note, which is the fifth. Then on the fifth again, we play the descending E major triad, 5, 3, 1, then back to the fifth with the E flat major seventh chord. Okay. Now, that's fairly straightforward. Okay, so the next bit of the tune is 2, 2, 5, 1s. One in E flat, one in G flat, right? That's fairly straightforward. We've already incorporated the idea of the G flat major triad as part of the E flat minor 7th chord. And we could see that G flat major as being the relative major of E flat minor, in which case we're kind of dipping into E flat minor for that part of the tune. It's one way of viewing it. In any case, it's 2, 2, 5, 1s. So nothing too weird there. Now, the melody here is really nice. If I just play it on its own, I just play the first bit. Now you would think of that maybe, if you didn't know anything else about it, as the chord tones of B flat 7, with a passing tone here. And that's basically how I view it. So I should do that. It's good to play in a few different places. And that would be a B flat 7 arpeggio, expressing that. But in fact, I mean, happens over F minor 7th. sound. And this happens a lot in standards. You'll find B flat 7 being played, or the 5/7 being played over the 2 minor, and it gives a 2 minor 11 sound. You know. And you'll also find in other tunes, which maybe I'll cover in different videos, you'll find the 2 minor being played over the 5/7. So this Barry Harris idea that you just chunk everything down to the 5 kind of seems to be reflected in the melodies to things. People don't always think of the 2. The 2 is thought of as a suspended chord, you know, rather than a chord in its own right. You know. You know. So that is certainly one way of looking at it. And then now we have the flat 9, sharp 9 thing going on. So if we look at that from the point of view of B flat, then we might be encouraged to think about what scales include those notes, and 2 good candidates would be the altered scale, B flat altered scale, which is the same as B melodic minor, or C flat melodic minor, if you want to be enharmonic about it. But as it is. So that has those notes in it. Also the half-whole scale, starting on B flat, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole, and so on. And that's a nice one because it actually includes the whole melodic phrase. That all belongs to the B flat half-whole scale. That's kind of a nice thing to observe. In fact, I don't think of it that way. I think of it as being the 5 and 6 or 13 of the E7 chord, or the E13. And why E7? Well, it's a tritone substitute of B flat 7. And another way of thinking about alterations is thinking about the tritone substitute, okay? Which is how we think of it, or tend to think of it in Barry Harris kind of concept. And that's a very common lick. You know, if you're Saturn Doll, right, Duke Ellington. That is an example, Moonlight in Vermont. You know, I hear Al Casey playing that on Fats Waller records. It's a common trope. Perhaps trope is the wrong word, but it's certainly a lick that you hear a lot, and it kind of adds a little bit of intrigue to the dominant sound. Arguably, you know, you hear it in bebop lines, all sorts of things. I'll probably point it out in other tunes that we cover, but it's kind of part of that gateway into the more altered dominant sounds which we tend to use today. I see, and still that combination of notes has that has a certain, you know, currency in the language. Anyway, so that's that. Right, now the A section happens again, which I've already covered, and then we come back to this rather lovely chord progression, which is basically F minor 7, walking down to F minor 7 over E flat, and then D minor 7 flat 5, which any Barry student will tell you is F minor 6. So it's basically all F minor, that bit. So then we go to 5, so that becomes a 2 of a 5 of G minus G7 flat 9, and then to C minor 7th. Then we do the same thing again. Walk down, C minor over B flat, A half diminished, D7 flat 9, G minor 7th, and then C7. So 3, 6, 2, F minor, B flat 7, 5, and E flat. So it's just a turnaround at the end. So let's break that down. As the first beat happens in we're starting on F minor, and then we go on G7, and then it happens again on C minor, ending on D7 flat 9, and then we get a turnaround. So it's 3 things really. It's that walkie down thing going from F minor to C minor, it's a walkie down thing going from C minor to G minor. Okay, how do we deal with that scalically? Well, there's a couple of ways. The first way, the most vanilla way that I would use, is probably best summed up by giving the scale outlines. So scale outlines in the Barry Harris system is when we run a scale up to from 1 to 7 and down again, because it's rhythmically better, to describe a chord progression. There's a few rules that can make it really simple to go through quite a lot of chord progressions, and this is no exception. First of all, we have to know what scale to use, and I think this sort of thing, right away, that D minor 7 flat 5, not only can we view it as being an F minor 6, but we can also view it as being the top part of a B flat 9. Let's put the bass note underneath. It transforms the sound into a B flat 9. Well, that means because the F minor B flat 7, well, that's a 2-5, so we can play the B flat 7 scale. And just like the early part of the melody, we're basically ignoring the F minor. We're just thinking of B flat 7. Might seem a little counterintuitive at first, but this is a good way to do it. A B flat 7 scale, B flat dominant, is also the same as the the F Dorian, and the B flat dominant bebop scale, I guess, is the same as the F minor bebop scale, for instance. So there's a few things like that which kind of tell you that the F minor isn't important, and it's good to focus on the B flat. I mean, different players think differently. Like Pat Martino might think of it all as minor, but the thing is that's a unit, and we're going to think of that as B flat 7. So we can get the G7 sound by running up. Sorry, try and make that clear. Try and make that into a B instead of a B flat, because that's the third of that. Right? So instead of getting the B flat, you get the B. Okay, and that works really well. So, let me see if I can sing it. Okay, that gives you that progression. It's good to do this. I mean, you could do it over a loop pedal or something, or a backing track, but it's good to sing, yeah? And then we do the same thing, and we're going to start on the F. This is F7, right? Go down to F sharp. Okay. Okay, so, and then this becomes a turnaround. So this the first part of the progression. We'll go. It's good to practice all positions. That's really easy, right? And then next thing is a turnaround. So it starts on the G minor. We're going to think of as E flat actually. So we're going to actually descend to E again to get the C7, and then stop. Okay, so I mean, this thing where we run the scale instead of going down to the 1, but we go to the note a half step higher, is called running that scale down to the 3rd. Okay, so in the case of B flat 7, we're running the 3rd. So running a scale down to the 3rd of G7, right? And then down to the 3rd of D7. Then we're doing E flat major down to the 3rd of C7, and then B flat 7, which covers the F minor and B flat 7. So that last bit isn't so important to me because I tend to play some sort of turnaround line on that, which I already play, but certainly I find that first bit very helpful for soloing fluently through the tune. So for instance, if I play, let's do that now. Right, that to me is easy to do. I find I can get a lot of lines that way. It's really nice. Okay, so we can relate the scale outline to the melody over the last state in this way. So our first few notes, are obviously all belonging to the B flat mixolydian or dominant scale. And look at that, we go up to B, which is of course the 3rd of G7 flat 9. So obviously it's very much running the scale up to the, in this case, up to the 3rd of G7, B flat up to the 3rd of G7. But it couldn't be simpler really, very textbook. And then we get notes very clearly in C minor, so that's the 5th and flat 3rd, the 4th passing tone. And we do the same thing, but we start on the note E flat, so we're on the... And then we miss out the first bit of that line as well, so it's just... So you kind of think of the first two notes as being in F7, and then that gives us the third of D7 flat 9. Okay, might seem a little tenuous, but it makes sense when context of the first bit of the melody. We got basically notes in G minor, so 5th, 4th, 3rd, and then it just stays on the 5th after that. So, which is a great place to be for turnaround. I mean, you could do a slightly more exotic turnaround. You could go to a tad down and turnaround, for instance, which is you start on E flat major, and we go to G flat major, and then B major, and then if you want to get the melody, we put E major sharp 11 or E7 sharp 11, depending on which version of the turnaround you're doing. So just it could be a little bit more exotic. Okay, so another interpretation of that melody line, which maybe chord scale people might like, is the fact that you can see the basically A flat minor in there with a 6th, so it's kind of A flat melodic minor or G altered. And then we can do the same thing for here. Look at that. So again, that's D altered. So G altered fits really nicely over the G7 flat 9. So we can go. And this bit fits as well. We could use the, A flat minor 6th diminished if you wanted. Resolving to C minor. Then it does the, and it goes to G minor, right? So that's kind of cool. That's an alternative interpretation, I guess. And that's pretty much the first interpretation I made of that tune before I learned anything about the Barry Harris system. It gives you a slightly different sound for soloing, so you can go from this kind of quite vanilla sound world to this kind of thing. Okay. Let's try it again. So we can go. So I'm using the altered scale there to get into those chords. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you find it interesting. Leave comments below. Bye.